Hello, welcome to the Women in Motorsports. Joe Samaniego here, along with Daniel Zeri from Racers, the girls behind the helmet. We encourage everyone to participate in the chat room, and a big special thank you to our Patreon subscribers, Colin, the show, Mark, Robin, for subscribing to us each and every week. And you too can subscribe to us by joining our Patreon for monthly subscription or buy me a coffee, in which you do a one-time contribution. Now we got a lot to talk about, starting with some of the big racing from across the pond, which we saw one of our folks we talked to in the past, Quick Gabi, had a really successful weekend.
Oh yeah, hello everyone. Hi, and thank you for being here with us again this week. As you said, Joe, it was quite an interesting weekend last week in Barcelona, Circuit de Catalunya, for the final round of the GT Winter Series Championship, where Gabriela Jilkova, also known as Quick Gabi to her followers, she also has a pretty big following in sim racing. We had an interview with her last year when she won the championship in the GT Winter Series, and so she was the reigning champion in that championship. It's not a very long championship. It was just 4 weekends, 4 rounds this year, two in Portugal and two in Spain. But it is quite interesting because. And it has grown in popularity in the last couple of years because it really gives the teams and the drivers an opportunity to go on track in the winter months in what are the warmest racetracks in Europe. So the usually it's Portimao. It was also Estoril, and then Jerez and Barcelona. Those are probably the warmest racetracks in Europe that are often also used for testing. And so it's a German championship actually, but they travel to these countries. And this year's grid was actually very interesting. There were like 40 cars for the final round in Barcelona. It's multi-class racing, so we have the prototypes cars. We have the GT3 cars, the GT Cup, a GT4, and also some touring cars. Of course, there was also the BMW M2 Cup, which is kind of a one make series for BMW's M2s, but it was a whole different class, all racing together in the same races. The weekend format is also quite interesting because there are three races per round. All the race weekend is organized in just one day on Sunday, with qualifying in the morning, two qualifying sessions in the morning, and then the three races in the afternoon. Two sprint races of 25 minutes each one. And each driver of teams are usually two drivers, so one driver does the first race, and the second driver does the second race, the second sprint race, and then in the late afternoon they all do the endurance race, which is 45 minutes, with a compulsory driver change in between. So this is the format of the championship that has, as I said, it has become a little bit more popular in the last couple of years, and give the opportunity to some really interesting and important teams in both GT3 racing and also GT4 racing, that they are preparing their campaigns for their later commitments. So like ARCA GT4 or European GT4, or also the GT3 based GT Masters in Germany, stuff like that. And so we had again Gabriela Jilkova and Robert Haub coming back to racing in the GT4 class as a reigning champion. Last year they did not only just won the GT4 class, but they won the overall championship last year. Because also there's an interesting points format where every driver in every class has the opportunity to win the overall thing. And Gabriela Jilkova and her teammate Robert Haub, last year they were racing for Zakspeed Racing, that they were then going to do the ARC GT4 for the first time last year. They did pretty well there. And while this year they are in a new team, it's called ZVO Racing, and it's a whole new team. But I think we will have the chance to ask her and to a little bit more in detail about all these new programs that she has for this upcoming season. But she's also doing again the ADAC GT4 and also making her debut in the European GT4 Championship. They had quite some great races towards the start of the championship, but at Barcelona they were probably not in the best position to win the overall championship, but they still had the chance, mathematical chances to win the whole thing. But they were still the favorites for the GT4 category. In the morning there was rain. There was heavy rain in Barcelona, so it was kind of tricky because with very little grip for Gabi, who was the first to go on track for the Q1. But she was like 3 seconds faster in her class in GT4, so claimed like easy pole position for her. And then went on to win her race, the first sprint race, pretty comfortable. Her race lead in class was never under threat, and she was also
Here's we may have just lost Daniel for just a quick second. We'll see once Daniel returns back. Continue on with the report on Quick Gabby's weekend over at Spain. With that said, let's go ahead and shift the gears over towards the ARCA Menards series. ARCA Menards series, of course, they race here in the United States. They are sort of seen as a level below the Truck Series, the Xfinity Series on your way to the NASCAR Cup Series. And one of the big things, of course, Tony Brenninger, she is running full time there driving number 25 for Venturini Motorsports. It was her second race, and it looks like she was going to be off to a good start with a 10th place starting position after qualifying. This year, qualifying has returned for all the major NASCAR series and for the ARCA Menards series. This was a unique qualifying because you didn't just have the ARCA Menards series at Phoenix Raceway, you also had the ARCA Menards West series racing as well. So imagine two series racing together. Now the cars are pretty much identical, equal. The big difference, ARCA Menards, when it comes to the main series, the ARCA Menards series, they race across the country. You then have ARCA Menards West, which focuses on the West Coast. Then ARCA Menards East, which focuses in the east side of the United States of America. So the two series, ARCA Menards and the ARCA Menards West, racing together in a joint race. Tony Brenninger, of course, she's with the ARCA Menards series. She came home 15th place. Overall, ran a solid day. The big thing, of course, first year full time, just gaining that experience lap after lap, putting together an effort for the entire season. Another driver that's running full time in the ARCA Menards series is Amber Balkan. She had a little bit of a rougher race. She started 25th for her, driving in the essentially the number 30. But unfortunately, she finished 30th place. She was caught up in a crash early on in the race, was unable to return, was done for the day. So it was a tough break for her considering the performance she had over in Daytona International Speedway during the opening race. But those were the only two. As I mentioned, we had the ARCA Menards West racing in the same event, the General Tires 150, and that's where we saw Bridget Burgess. She is racing for her third season in the ARCA Menards West Series. So just like last year, she was in the West Series. That's how we had the opportunity to interview her after the race at Portland International Raceway. She'll be in Portland International Raceway as the ARCA Menards Series are going to Portland as well. And this is where we saw her putting together overall a solid effort. She started 27th, but then finished 23rd. One of the big things she has to overcome was a flat tire early on in the race from contact from behind on lap 50, make that pit stop, but then she was able to come back and finish the race, completing most of the laps in the General Tire 150. So overall, good effort for Bridget Burgess in the ARC Menard Series West season opening race. We see we do have a comment from Ben Schneider, host of Grid Encore on Mondays. Decent run for Tony. Needs to show some speed this year with the luxury of being in a Venturini car. A lead lap finish is solid. We'll see how her season progresses after Talladega next month. And Ben brings up a good point. Just like in Europe, when it comes to racing in the United States, different teams, different equipment. Venturini Racing is one of the top teams when it comes to the ARCA Menards series. We're not talking about mid-pack team or like in the case of Bridget, where it's just a single car, family-run team, very much just that one car has to go through the season. Venturini Racing, they have the resources, they have the sponsorship funds to put in a championship caliber effort, hire more people to work on that car. So definitely a great point by Ben when it comes to Tony and her full-time season in the ARCA Menards series. And of course, as been mentioned, they'll be racing next month at Talladega. That's a traditional stop for the ARCA Menards series. And it's going to be something very interesting to see when it comes to the super speedways, the big pack racing. That's where we see some of the big crashes as well when it comes to the ARCA Menards series. Now, it does look like we may have Daniel rejoining us shortly to continue on with his story in regards to Quick Gabi.
Yeah. Well, sorry for the connection. I'm on a trip, so it was a little bit challenging. So I was talking about Gabi Jilkova. Racing in Circuit de Montbello in Barcelona last weekend. She won the first race as I mentioned, pretty easy for her. Even she was in rainy conditions, it was she had quite an easy win. Then her teammate did the second race, the second sprint race, also won that one. And they were leading quite comfortably the endurance race after around midway through the race. There was a safety car that made the things a little bit more difficult, and Gabriela had a perfect first stint, led throughout, but then Robert Haub had a little bit more of a challenge to keep the closest GT4 competitor behind in the final laps really, and he lost the lead on the final lap. So they were second in class, and also in the top 10 overall. So it was quite a good end of the season for Gabriela Jilkova and her teammate Robert Haub, and they finished first in GT4. So they won again at the GT4 class. But they didn't quite make it to win the overall standings, which also there was another female racer competing for that overall standings, who was W Series racer Nerea Marti. Nerea also had her first season in touring cars actually, because she had always raced in Formula cars before, in the Formula 4 and then in the Formula 3 regional car using W Series. So it was her first experience really in touring cars. But she did pretty well. She won races. She had podiums. So it was kind of a very interesting first season in touring cars for Nerea. And she came first in leading the overall standings at the final round. Unfortunately, that didn't quite went to plan for her the last round in Barcelona. They were second, and third in class, so lost a little bit of points to the driver Marchevitz, that ultimately won the overall standings and the BMW M2 class. Also, there was another female driver joining the field for the first time, actually, Carrie Schreiner, the very experienced GT3 racer. She raced last year in the Italian GT Championship. And she just announced yesterday that she will do a championship, a GT3 championship based in Germany, and probably also some other programs in the meantime. And she had also an interesting race weekend in Barcelona. She was sharing the car with Peter Terting, a GT3 Mercedes AMG. And they had a gearbox issue in qualifying. They couldn't make the start to the first sprint race, where Peter was actually scheduled to get behind the wheel. Then finally, Carrie made the start for the second race, the second sprint race, and she went from a P33 on the grid to lead the GT3 class. GTR class, and was also on the overall podium, also passing on with a very good battle, passing an LMP3 car at the end. So that was quite something for Kerry. And also in the endurance race, they rounded out the season. She also did the same thing in the first stint. She went from P33 on, which was actually last on the grid, to lead her class. And also again very close to the overall podium. But then in this, the safety car timing was a little bit off for her. And Peter Terting lost a little bit of a positions towards the end. He was P8 overall, but then made the top step of the podium again in the GT3 class. So that was quite a good final round of the season for the GT Winter Series. While we will have Gabriela Jilkova racing again in GT4 Europe very soon in Imola for the first round of the season.
We have Not too long, more racing ahead for her, and of course the Winter Series coming to an end as we approach spring. And of course, we want to give everyone a friendly reminder: we got a busy weekend of racing this weekend. The Formula One, MotoGP, bunch of series racing all over across the world, and of course, subscribe to the Grid Network right here. Now, of course, if you tune into our pre-race program and wrap-up program, we have brought up some of the women racers that are racing each weekend. Of course, this past weekend, as we talked about, the ones that are racing this weekend. You see there, we have Erica Enders and Brittany Force. They are part of the National Hot Rod Association. The National Hot Rod Association, one of the most popular racing series in the United States. They cover drag racing. Most of the time, it's a quarter mile or shorter, where they go from one end to the other one, just a straight drag. Who could reach the top speed at the end and the fastest time? And you see these just as common as short tracks across the United States. Drag strips are all over the West Coast, the East Coast, even as far north as Alaska as well. Canada has them, and we know Hockenheim, of course, has a drag strip as well there too. When it comes to the National Hot Rod Association, one of the things, of course, as we mentioned, Brittany Force, Leia Pruitt, they both raced there in the National Hot Rod Association. There are quite a lot of female racers in the National Hot Rod Association, and one of the big things we're going to be doing here is giving more attention to the National Hot Rod Association and the female racers racing there. This past weekend, they were racing, and overall, the point stand is Brittany Force. She is in top fuel. For fans not familiar, top fuel, these are the fastest cars in drag racing. You have the big engine in the back with the huge wheels, and then it just looks like a rocket ship on wheels laying down on the ground. Huge wing at the end. These cars can go over 300 miles per hour. This is where you can find Brittany Force and Leia Pruitt. Brittany Force is right now fourth place in the championship in points. She hasn't won the championship in this class yet. However, there has been a past champion that is female in this class. That was Shirley Muldowney. She is one of the first pioneers when it comes to female racers in the National Hot Rod Association. Leia Pruitt, she is 14th in the points. She had a tough race weekend, did not qualify. Unlike NASCAR or other series where you're qualifying just for your starting grid position, in the National Hot Rod Association, you have to qualify to make it into the show. There's no provisionals, there's no guaranteed locked in spots. So even some of the big name drivers like Ron Capps, John Force, they've missed races as well because they failed to qualify. So for Leo Perry, it was a tough break, but this is just part of the National Hot Rod Association week in and week out. Now, as I mentioned, John Force, some people recognize him as a legend when it comes to funny car racing. There, Alexis DeJoria, she is racing in funny car, and she has sponsorship with Rocket, which of course we've all seen sponsor Tatiana Calderon in the IndyCar as well as other series as well. The W Series rocket all over when it comes to females in motorsports. She is currently eighth place in the point standings for the National Hot Rod Association Funny Car Division. Funny cars, they look like a stock car, but the body sort of comes up towards the end. That's where the term funny car came in because the cars do look a bit funny compared to a normal stock production car. When it comes to stock production car, that's where the cars that look the most like something from the street is Pro Stock. Pro Stock, when you compare it to the top fuel, they're the slowest class out there, but still these cars are going really fast down that quarter mile track. And there is where we have Erica Enders. She is currently right now second place in the point standings in Pro Stock, and she is the 2014 Pro Stock champion. When it comes to the National Hot Rod Association, three female racers have won their class championship. Shirley Muldowney in Top Fuel, Erica Enders in Pro Stock, and Angelique Sampre in Pro Stock Motorcycles. There is a motorcycle class in the National Hot Rod Association, and Angel, she used to drive the Winston sponsored bike, and she got championships with that bike. Of course, that was when Winston was sponsoring the National Hot Rod Association. So overall, the National Hot Rod Association, there is a good number of female racers, and there quite a history of female racers in that group of racing and drag racing. So we're definitely going to be committed to bringing more attention to the National Hot Rod Association and other racing series throughout the 2022 year that have female racers. And of course, as Daniel from Racers the Girls Behind the Helmet, we encourage everyone to visit his website, Racers Behind the Helmet, where there you could get a full preview of all the racing going on each and every week, including all the news stories. There's Gabrielle that we just talked about, Michelle Halder returning to TCR Europe. We cannot wait for them to come back to racing. And of course, the racing calendar up top, where you can see all the upcoming races as well as other updates throughout the website. So overall, a very exciting time for motorsports as the racing season is starting to come back. Daniel, when it comes to this racing weekend, what are some of the big races you're going to be following?
That's really interesting. There will be not quite a good amount of racing in Sebring for the of course for the 12-hour Sebring, where we have Catherine Legg, of course, and also Ashton Harrison racing in the LMGTE Pro in the Acura from Racers Edge Motorsport, and then of course Catherine, who is doing also the full season in IMSA. She's racing in the Hardpoint team Porsche number 99. Then today we actually have the Michelin Pilot Challenge race also in Sebring with two female driver, Sheena Monk, who by the way yesterday was her birthday, so we say happy birthday to Sheena Monk, who is racing in the number 3 Toyota Supra GT4 by Infinity Autosport. And then in the TCR class, Taylor Hagler, who is also the reigning champion in that category. So again, two very competitive female drivers in the Michelin Pilot Challenge. And then in the FIA WEC race, the season opener, always in Sebring, we will have the debut actually in sports car racing for Lilou Wadou in the LMP2 prototype by Richard Mille Racing. And then, of course, the Iron Dames with Sarah Bovey and Michelle Gatting and Rahel Fry racing in the LMGTE category in AM category in the FIA WEC. So these are the main three races that we'll be following this weekend.
And those are some big races. I know Kobe's going to be following Sebring all 12 hours. It's going to be a fun race, and the 1,000-mile race as well. We encourage everyone to be sure to visit our website as well as our social media page as well, and subscribe to the Grid Network right here on YouTube. And be sure to invest in the Grid Network. A big thank you again to Colin, Deschelle, and Mark for investing in the Grid Network. There are monthly Patreon, and of course you can do a buy me a coffee. Buy us a coffee. We'll display your name on the air as well for a week, since it is a one-time contribution. For Downs Area of Racers Girls Behind the Helmet, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.